today we're going to be taking a look at High School of the Dead. And as you can tell from the name of this one, you can tell it has to do with zombies. And it seems like in this feature I happen to be covering a lot of horror themes. For examples, I happen to cover a devil theme, such as Devilman, a vampire theme which happened to be Hellsing, and a demon theme that happened to be Devil May Cry, even though that was based off a video game. And finally, we're talking about zombies. So kinda interesting how that worked out. So anyways, I'm going to explain the story to High School of the Dead. So it starts with the main character, Takashi Komuro. And well, since he's the main character, you expect him to be the leader type. And well, that's pretty much what happens. And then there's Rei Miyamoto. I wonder if she's related to Shigeru Miyamoto. Probably not. And she was childhood friends with Komuro. And she promised that she wanted to marry Komuro in the future, but instead she ended up wanting to do that with his best friend. Who, by the way, dies in the first episode. And then there's Seiko Busujima. She's the leader of the Kendo Club, so of course you can expect her to be using like her katana all the time, which happens to be a wooden sword. And then there's Seiya Takagi. She was also childhood friends with Komuro, but in a different way than Rei. And then there's Kota Hirano. At first he acts like a total amateur, but then as soon as he gets his hands on a nail gun, he pretty much just turns into a total gun nut. It's pretty hilarious. But it actually turns out that he actually had a big interest within guns for quite some time. So just in case you're wondering, it's not like, you know, he just suddenly became a gun expert out of nowhere. And then there's Shizuka Mirakawa. She was the school nurse, and well, the easiest way to sum her up is just huge fucking titties. And finally I'll mention is Erisu Marasato. She was a young girl that happened to be saved by the main gang after her father was killed. And by the way, that part was pretty damn depressing. And those are just the main characters. And as for the actual story, well, it's basically like any kind of zombie movie you've ever seen, but, you know, set in a school at first, in Japan. And one thing I do find to be pretty amusing is that they never say the word zombie once in the show. They just call them, or the undead. And I do find that to be pretty interesting in one way, because in the George Romero films, they also never use the word zombie even once. And speaking of George Romero, they actually do somewhat mention his name within this show. Where one of the characters says, it's almost like that George Romeo movie I once saw. Obviously you can tell what they're referencing at, but still, pretty funny. Although it is weird that they also do mention Mel Gibson, and yet they didn't even change his name at all. I guess Mel Gibson isn't trademarked. So anyways, it first starts out at the school, and then after when they leave the school, they end up going on a bus. And there's this like really creepy pedophile teacher on there that's like creeping everyone out. So after when they get the hell out of there, they're always moving on to different situations. And all the characters are trying to get to their homes to see if everyone there is okay. So yeah, like I said, it's a pretty typical zombie kind of thing, but at the same time, it's something that I haven't really seen in an anime before, and especially in an anime where it first starts out where it looks like it's going to be one of those stereotypical school animes. And then everything turns batshit insane. As simple as it is, I kinda like it, and you know, even with a lot of zombie films, a lot of people usually don't watch the films for the plot story anyway. But all I can say about the story is that it's fun. And I guess one other thing I should mention is that there's a shit ton of fan service within this one. Yeah, I think there's more fan service in this than Heaven's Lost Property, but thankfully, I would at least consider this one to be, you know, good. Not only is this anime fun, but it's also funny. So anyways, let's move on to animation. And I have to say, the animation looks pretty damn good for its time. Well, it is 2010, it's not that old yet, but it still looks really good. Also, the action scenes are awesome. So there's not a whole lot that I complain about, but yeah, like I said, about the fan service thing, there is a lot of like view angles that they always use to try and like show it off as much as possible. And sometimes it's kind of funny, but then after a while it's like, okay, yeah, we get it. Like, you have boobs, you have ass, and you have a vagina. But it's not something I'm going to be too critical about because, well, like I said, it's pretty mindless fun. And now as for the voice acting, I think it's pretty well done, and I may not be too familiar with most of the voice actors, but what I can say is that they at least do a good job. And the only two voice actresses that I recognize here is Jessica Booney and Brittany Kabowski. And as I said, they do a good job, and I think everyone else does the best job that they could, so really, I have no complaints. Now, as for the score, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. Yeah, I think this anime is pretty good, and it's also a hell lot of fun. And highly entertaining. It never gets dull once. Or at least I never got bored of it. But there is a lot to be had here. Like I said, there's a lot of action, there's a lot of blood, and a fuck ton of fan service. But just because you have a lot of fan service, I don't really think it's the end of the world. Because unlike an anime such as Ikitoshin, this is just balls to the wall hilarious. But anyways, I think this is a really good zombie anime. It also feels pretty damn good to finally watch something good, because the last 3 animes I had to watch before this one were just crap. So I had to go through Maple Story, which was just awful. And then there was My Bride's a Mermaid, and yeah, I may have been a bit generous within it, but it was just mind-bendingly stupid, and it's not something I'd really want to watch again, but I wouldn't say it's good. And then there was Heaven's Lost Property, which I just really didn't care for it. So anyways, at least this one is good. Or at least I think so. I had a lot of fun with it. As ridiculous as it can be at times, it's still good fun.